I felt just a little, that's the disease.
Okay. That works. Welcome, everyone. It's Tuesday, April 29th. It's time for our regularly scheduled city council meeting for April 29th. I think I said that, 2025. Clerk, certify the meeting notice, please.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Jacobs.
Here.
Councilmember Page.
Here.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Here.
Thank you. Will you join me in the pledge of allegiance? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is changes to the agenda. Council item G3 isn't ripe for hearing tonight, so I think I can administratively just let you know that. So that's an information item. We'll move down to the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve the consent agenda as it's written.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Go down to special business, Denim Day proclamation. See how fast I got down there? Whereas the United States government has declared April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and the WCA has declared April 30th, 2025 as Denim Day. And whereas both events are intended to draw attention to the fact that sexual assault remains a serious issue in our society, and whereas harmful attitudes about sexual assault allow these crimes to persist and allow survivors to be re-victimized. And whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Denim Day were also instituted to call attention to misconceptions and misinformation about rape and sexual assault, and the problem that many in society remain disturbingly uninformed with respect to issues of assault. And whereas every 68 seconds, someone in America is sexually assaulted, and approximately 1 in 4 women are raped during their lifetime. And whereas with proper education on the matter, there is compelling evidence that we can be successful in reducing incidents of this alarming and psychologically damaging crime. And whereas the city of Garden City is an important partner in the efforts of the WCA to educate residents about the true impact of rape and sexual assault. Now therefore I, John G. Evans, Mayor of the city of Garden City, Idaho, do hereby proclaim April 30th, 2025 to be Denim Day, dated this 29th day of April, 2025. Okay.
See the seal too?
Yeah, you're making faces.
Did it go away? Oh,
No, it's just fuzzy. So we'll try to seal in there.
Here you go, Jim. You want to check that? I can send it to B.
Okay, your phone might just look that way, but I'm afraid it might be fuzzy. Thank you.
Of course.
We're gonna get this right, Dee.
Well, we want to post station, thank our the city for supporting this in person.
Well, we do, and we should send her regrets. She couldn't be here tonight.
Yeah, well, carry on with the important business.
Yeah, we appreciate it. We really carry the
Anything we
man.
can do. So,
Thank you, B.
yep, nice to see you, gentlemen. Nice to see you.
Good night, Dee. Okay, the next one is Lung Cancer Action Week proclamation. It's at the right distance. Whereas the Lung Cancer Association's Lung Force Initiative has been working to ensure that fewer people are diagnosed with lung cancer and those living with the disease live longer since 2014. And whereas lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths, whereas lung cancer screening saves lives and advocacy and increased awareness result in more high-risk individuals getting screened. And whereas public support for research funding will result in new treatments and better methods of early detection. And whereas Lung Force is a national initiative led by the American Lung Association to defeat lung cancer. Be it resolved that Garden City, Idaho hereby designates the second week in May as Lung Cancer Action Week throughout the city and encourages all residents of Garden City to learn more about lung cancer risk factors, early detection, and to take action. Dated this 29th day of April, 2025. One more. This is a Visitors Bureau proclamation. Whereas travel and tourism industries are essential to the success of every industry and will continue to be a critical part of Idaho's economy, development, and workforce. And whereas the Garden City Visitors Bureau is vital in supporting Garden City's travel and tourism industry by promoting local businesses, attractions, and events that draw visitors to the area. And whereas the Bureau's efforts enhance community engagement, attract investment, and generate significant economic impact that helps Garden City thrive. And whereas in Idaho, direct travel spending has grown to $5.8 billion in 2023. Direct travel generated employment increased by 2,510 jobs to reach 55,360 billion. And the tax revenue increased by 5.5%, generating $438.6 million in state and local taxes. Now, therefore, I, John G. Evans, Mayor of the City of Garden City, Idaho, do hereby proclaim May 4th through 10th, 2025 to be National Travel and Tourism Week in Garden City, Idaho, and urge the citizens of Idaho to join me in recognizing the essential role this industry plays in our state, in our communities like Garden City. Dated this 29th day of April, 2025. Council, you have your staff reports. We've got a couple of folks here if you have any questions. Seeing none, we'll move on to item G1. This is a public hearing on SUBFY2024-0003 Reese Townhomes. Anybody need to declare a conflict on this item?
No.
Okay. Mr. Hatch?
Good evening, Mayor Evans and council members. Thank you for your consideration of our final plat this evening. Let me share with Zoom.
It still needs to be shared.
Subject property is just southwest of the intersection of Chinden and Orchard, and goes from 36th Street, which is adjacent to Orchard, west to 37th Street. From the preliminary plat, the final plat really hasn't had any substantial changes or modifications. So it's more of kind of a formality to show the site plan also hasn't changed. And the landscaping plan has not changed either. A couple comments we got from the public. There was concern about the density. We did review the density with the zone, and it does meet the density requirements. There was some concerns about removing existing trees, which we did have an arborist report, and in recapping that, the trees that are being removed are poor, dying or deteriorating. As far as the traffic study, there was some concern if that would be required, which based on ACHD staff report, at this time it is not required because we fall below that threshold. And for fire life safety, there were some concerns, and our intent would be to meet all the safety and fire codes through the building life safety analysis and construction. And I will stand for any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Hatch? Okay. With that, I'll open the public hearing on SUBFY 2024-3. We have no one present signed up, but before I get to that, because I'm getting the reminder from my very competent city council that we haven't heard from Ms. Thornborough yet. So with that,
Mayor, members of the council, I don't know that you necessarily need to hear from me on this application. Just as a reminder, this subdivision proposal has been approved for a preliminary plat that was processed as a planned unit development for 32 lots, which includes 26 townhomes, 2 duplexes, and 4 common lots. The waivers that were requested were for more than 4 units on a common drive, as well as the setbacks. Very common waiver request. The applicant also requested waivers to the duration of time that the application prior to expiration. And so they asked for a 5-year time frame instead of the 2-year time frame. And thus also asked for a waiver from the plan unit development requirement that requires that development can start in 2 years. As Mr. Hatch already noted, there were 2 members of the public that provided written testimony. As he noted, tree mitigation will be required for any of the trees that are not found to be dead or dying. And there was no change that would necessitate an additional traffic study, and they will be required to meet the fire safety concerns. The hearing tonight is for to determine whether or not the public hearing is to determine compliance with the final plat. The required findings are found on page 41 of your of the council packet. And on page 50 and 51, staff has provided recommended reasoned statements in the draft decision document. You can sustain and approve the staff's recommendation, or sustain staff's recommendation, which would approve the project as drafted. You could modify the conditions of approval and still sustain staff's recommendation, or you could reject the recommendation and deny the application. And with that, I stand for questions.
so I'm understanding that nothing substantially has changed from the approval that we gave for the preliminary plat.
Mayor, no, it's pretty clear cut in this application that they haven't done anything that meets the threshold of a substantial change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will now, in proper order, open the public hearing on SUBFY 2024-3. There's no one here apart from Mr. Hatch to testify. I don't see anyone online. I can't read what's in the left corner way over there, but is there anyone online that wishes to testify? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Hatch, do you have any closing statements?
Mayor Evans and council members, candidly, I'm very excited about this project, and I acquired the land for my office, I kind of had to get inherited this land around it with mobile homes, and it's been an arduous task of cleaning it up. And I think this is kind of the next step in that progression. And it's a little ambitious for this kind of southern side of Chinden, and I believe in Garden City's growth. And I think that this is a great, step in kind of revitalizing that portion of the city as well. So I'm very honored to present this.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Hatch. Any questions, Council? Okay, with that, I will close the public hearing on SUB FY 2024-3. And Council, I'll turn it to you for deliberation. And action.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I would just like to make a couple comments. I also believe that the south part of Garden City is an exciting area and welcome improvements and upkeep and maintenance of what's existing there. So this is an exciting project, and I also note that there were almost no changes from what we approved in August of last year in the preliminary. In making the motion, Mr. Mayor, do you want each finding of fact conclusion of law restated, or do you want me to just sustain as written? I thought the staff did a great job of noting the standards here, and I wouldn't have changed anything, but if I need to make a record, I can.
I think the record that you are sustaining what's in the packet is sufficient.
Great. With that. Goodness. Bear with me, I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the final plat, SUB FY 2024-0003. Thank you. The Reese Townhomes, and adopt the staff's findings of facts and conclusion of law.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Jacobs?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hatch.
Thank you.
Item G2, this is a second reading of ordinance N55-25. Do we need another summary of this one, council, or if you don't, I'd entertain an action.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I'll move to approve, or excuse me, move that we have the second reading of ordinance 1055-25 by title only.
Okay.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the clerk call the roll.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobs? Second reading ordinance 1055-25, an ordinance of the city of Garden City, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Garden City Code Title 6 Water and Sewer, Chapter 2 Municipal Water System, Chapter 3 Municipal Sewer Collection System, Chapter 5 Cross Connections, Chapter 6 Industrial Pretreatment, repealing Section 8 Special Agreements by simplifying language, removing redundant or unnecessary language, and amending language to change some violations to infraction offenses, providing severability, repealing conflicting city code provisions, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. We'll now move down to item I1. This is our work session. Lisa, you're free to
I'll be right back.
go up and take care of a couple things we need to take care of. This is our work session regarding CPA FY 2024-6. This is a Title 8 amendment to the Planned Unit Development section. So what I think I'll do Uh, First of all, I want to compliment the Planning and Zoning Commission, because they, I think, did a very thorough review of the PUD code, and we're beneficiaries of, I think, a lot of their hard work. But to start out, Jenna, why don't you brief us on where we are?
Mayor and members of the council, thank you, Mayor. I would agree. I think that the Planning and Zoning Commission spent a lot of time on this. This is actually the seventh work session. This will be the second with the city council, and the P&Z did 5 work sessions. And what's before you tonight is their actual recommendation. So they've had a public hearing on this matter already. And so what's in your packet is their recommendation, but I can attest that not only did they go through those work sessions, but I personally sat in the room with several commissioners and worked through it more than once. And then had others just hand me their notes more than once. And so they really did take a lot of time and try to think through this, I believe. So this is their recommendation. And there is a public hearing scheduled before you on May 27th on this matter. The intent of the suggested changes aren't just to address the plan unit development section itself, but the causes that result in people continually asking for the plan unit development ordinance to be applied. And some of those sound probably quite familiar to you, such as more than 4 units on a common lot, or an allowance for a 0 setback, a 0-foot setback to allow for townhomes. And so there are other sections of code that are included in this proposal, in addition to the specific rules for plan unit development. That the intent is summarized on pages 129 and 130 of the council packet and the staff report. I'm happy to go through those one by one, but I might do that as I kind of go through the particular sections themselves instead of just the summary. If you look on page 131 of the packet, or page 4 of the staff report, the proposed changes are not in ordinance format yet. They are intended hopefully to be a little bit easier to read than the strike throughs that you tend to see. And so how to read the proposed changes to the plan unit development specific criteria, that 86B7. On the side that's orange, that's our current code. That's the code that is in effect right now. And then what's in black is the proposed ordinance. And then in addition, if the sections line up, they're adjacent to each other, so you can see what the changes are. So in the existing code and the proposed code, there is a purpose statement. But the purpose statement got a lot shorter. And the purpose has been to note that the intent of a plan unit development is to promote, it says, exemplary site developments that go above and beyond what a code would otherwise compel. And that's kind of a give and a take. The Planning and Zoning Commission did really look at, if you're asking for waivers to code, then you really need to meet a higher standard. So there are objectives that are identified in this proposal. And the applicability is any zoning. This is a tool that can be utilized in any zoning district within the city. The general provisions, that section has been completely deleted. The proposal is a repeal of the full plan unit development section and to be replaced with the new proposal. And then there's some administration that's identified. I did want to point out that number one says by virtue of utilizing the PUD process, which relies on an applicant's proposed alternative to code standards, the applicant is choosing to participate in a process that inherently contains some degree of subjectivity. The alternative to this process is to adhere to all code standards. And so that's specifically addressed that there will be subjectivity in this ordinance.
Ms. Thornborough, would you prefer interruptions as they come or at a later time in discussion?
Mayor, Council President Page, please feel free to interrupt at any time.
I had made some notes at the top of page 135, and you just read that statement. This process inherently contains some degree of subjectivity. The alternative to this process is to adhere to all code standards. That's not piecemeal, correct? It's either a PUD or just the regular code. Is that correct? You can't sort of pick and choose. And that was my concern. I know we had some issues in the past with live, work, create overlay where you know, people would kind of take the best of both, apply a hybrid code. It's the intent. Either you do all PUD or no PUD.
Mayor, Council President Page, it's all or nothing is the intent.
Okay.
If that wording needs to be worked on, we can certainly make sure that it's more clear.
I might have been the only one. Did that jump out to either of you?
Honestly, no.
Yeah, but it's a great point.
Yeah,
and I think
yeah.
it-
Just to clarify.
intent can be, well, I tried, but I still want to check. I think we need to make it as clear as possible where it's black and white. Either you do one or the other. So it's not intent, it's choose.
Yeah. And then there's always the variance tool, right?
Mayor, Council President Page, there is the variance tool, but that is a very hard tool to apply in that there are very strict standards.
But when you mentioned, you said to try to hold people to a higher standard, is that what you mean by that? Is that you have to define higher standard, I guess? You'd mentioned that if they go that route, the intent is that really being more specific on the objectives of B?
Mayor, Councilmember Jacobs, if on page 137, there's something new that's called required PUD enhanced improvements.
Oh, okay.
And so to utilize this tool, now the applicant is required to demonstrate that they've provided proportional improvements to their ask. And so if they're asking for something relatively minor, you can see number 2 here on the screen. It says that the enhanced improvements shall be proportionate to each adjustment or waiver that's requested. And then there's some criteria for the decision maker to determine if they're proportionate. And it's really trying to get at that proportionality on gain, cost, et cetera. And then there are some examples, and a code specifically says that these are examples of enhanced improvements, trying not to tie somebody into these very specific ideas. But there are different categories, including outdoor space. So adding additional outdoor space to a project, or preserving natural systems. Perhaps somebody dedicates part of their site area to wetland habitat, for example. Housing affordability is one of the things that's a little bit difficult to try to legislate in Idaho, in that Idaho has determined that it's unconstitutional to require affordable housing. But this would allow that give and take. If somebody provides affordable housing, they can have reduced setbacks, increased densities, et cetera. And then neighborhood activation. So really creating an area where people go. So it may be, I'll use an example outside of Garden City, although I shouldn't, like Hyde Park or an area like that where they're really activating a spot for people to go, or implementing sustainable design and practices. And that suggested category isn't just environmental, it's economic, et cetera. And then this code looks at what can be waived, what areas of adjustments can be waived. So densities, and then up to 20% of the gross land area to uses that wouldn't otherwise be allowed, form standards, or residential densities. But it also specifies that the standards of the planned unit development cannot be waived through the application. And so that might go to council president's concern that it's an all or nothing. And then this is something that your legal counsel really wanted to see, is those required findings have been whittled down to only 5 required findings. And then
Charles, AKA the Whittler.
we worked hard at getting those down.
Director Thornborough, may I, just quickly, before we move too far on, I had made some notes in the margin on page 137 of the packet, right at the bottom. When talking about these enhanced improvements, number 1 says, the applicant must provide documentation to guarantee the successful implementation of and maintenance of each proposed PUD enhanced improvement. And I just thought the language there was really strong. Can you give me an example of how somebody might document and guarantee successful implementation? I mean, the first, and I wrote in the margin, surety, question mark, like what would constitute a guarantee?
Mayor, Council President Page, one example that I can think of is in affordable housing. Perhaps they have applied for the affordable housing tax incentive credits that restricts the housing to be affordable for 10 years or something along those lines. And so the intent, because it's really hard to try to figure out what kind of documentation we need to look at when it's just kind of an open,
I see.
give us an enhancement. We can certainly look at that and take that word guarantee and try to make it less, because who
I
can
do
ever
feel like it's really
guarantee?
strong. Yeah.
So-
It's like certified promise of successful implementation. I don't know. I'd like to see maybe some more aspirational language there.
Mayor, Council President Page will definitely work on coming up with something prior to the hearing.
And if I'm the only one, please speak up. I
I'd just
know.
be curious on Mr. Wadham's thoughts on the word guarantee. Is it better, is it okay to leave it there, or to Council President's Page point, maybe it's a little too?
Mayor and Council, I just so where it says guarantee, a guarantee does have some legal significance too, so I think maybe just find a different word.
I agree.
That'd be my legal recommendation.
I think that might allow, you know, kind of the preamble that Jenna went through. It makes this a little different than some of the other things we deal with in the straight code, is a subjectivity. So
Sure.
part of the code says we're going to be subjective, and I think hopefully that gives us some,
Flexibility.
yeah, some legal cover. I mean, you chose to use PUD, and we're telling you that there's going to be some subjective components. So that's what kind of struck me with that. So go ahead, Jen.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I leave the planned unit development proposed code, does anybody want to hang out and discuss it? Another provision?
So I have a general comment.
Absolutely.
And, just really hats off to all the hands that put this together. I was, before the meeting, talking to one of my colleagues and said, it was a joy to read this in this format. I liked the instructions on how to read it. It was really plain and clear that sections were being removed and some sections are the same and other sections, there's even a color for where it's mentioned in a different place. And I found that really intuitive.
Side by side was good.
Yeah.
Great.
Mayor, council members, thank you for that. And I can't take credit for all of it. That also suggestions from your planning and zoning on what would be easier for them to digest. Some of that did come from them. So thank you. But I am glad that it's helpful in this format.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
So my peers here are asking great questions, and I think I might have just found a small little typo, but maybe not. Page 148 of the packet. 1B. If you read 1B, should it be towards the end of that sentence or the end of that stipulation, 1 class C or C class amenities shall be provided? Yeah, sorry. Did I not say that? I'm sorry.
She's at one.
Page
148,
148.
148 about third of the way down.
Yeah.
Third to a half of the way down.
1B.
Mayor, Councilmember Rasmussen, the intent is to allow for 2 amenities to be provided at the from one category and then require. It may be counterintuitive and we can work on that.
Okay. Because it just looks like it says 2 class A amenities or 1 class B or 1 class.
Oh. C. Thank you. There is a C there. Thank you
okay,
very
okay.
much for that. My
So-
apologies for.
No,
getting-
no, that's all right. I'm kind of embarrassed I found something like that instead of asking great questions. But anyway, I did have a question though. So, and I like the discussion you had about proportionality a bit ago. So I kind of built an example in my head. Given this section that we're looking at on page 148. So just for example, if some application or some applicant wants wants to keep the 5-foot setbacks in front, but wants rear setbacks reduced by 2 feet. That's it. Just a small little thing like that. And maybe that's not a small little thing, but anyway, that's the example I came up with. And let's say it's a 30-unit development. So looking at this section on page 148, would they, and thinking of the word proportionality you used, would they have to do let's see, sorry, now I've lost my spot here. 2 class A's, 1 class B or 1 class C, or no, I'm sorry, it would be, I guess, 4 class A's, if I'm interpreting this correctly, or 1 class or 2 class B's or 2 class C's. So what I'm trying to get at is proportionality is if they're only requesting a small adjustment, I understand that they can just use the code.
Mhm.
But if they really do like say, you know what, I'm confined on this lot, I really want to do those reduced setbacks. Do they have to do all those, or is there proportionality? Would it be up to city council or planning and zoning to kind of take those numbers down if we think that, or if planning and zoning thinks that they don't need to do all those things?
Mayor, Councilmember Rasmussen, Short answer is yes, they would have to do that. Long answer, if they're using the plan unit development, they could request a waiver of this. This, where we start on page 145 of the packet. These are changes that are not specific to the plan unit development. And so they would apply regardless of what tool is being utilized. And so if there's a multifamily application that's being utilized or a request that would only need to go through design review, a subdivision request, those provisions would apply. And so these provisions here, starting on page 145 of the packet or 18 of the staff report, are other sections of code that are design standards, landscaping standards, et cetera, that apply to all sorts of different applications. The multifamily code that's currently in effect in Garden City requires amenities to be provided already. And so there was the suggestion of, if we're requiring multifamily after 3 units to start applying amenities, why aren't we applying that same requirement to subdivisions as well? And so that is where the different amenities came into play. And so some of the Class A are intended to be very easy to meet. And the Class B are a little bit harder, and the Class C, somebody's digging deep. They're providing a clubhouse or something a little bit bigger and a bigger amenity. At one point in time and currently in code, again, just for multifamily and current code, the amenities are kind of, right now it says, I take that back. Right now it gives you have to apply these different types of amenities, but they're not broken out in Class A, Class B, Class C. They're just the quality of life, open space, and recreation. And currently it requires the more amenities you have to provide, you have to take from different categories. So that's a concept that's already in code. What this does is just creates the different classifications, easy, not so easy, hard, and tries to give you more credit. It had been an point system, and the Planning and Zoning Commission didn't like that. They prefer the matrix. And then they feel that the point system can lock a decision maker into something that might not be great. It was the sentiment that came from them. But so to answer your question, yes, they would have to apply this unless they went through the plan unit development and requested a waiver.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And I'll just say really quickly, I meant to say before I ask the question is, I think it's just worth saying again, even though it's been said twice, that the work that you and the Planning and Zoning Commission did on this is great. It was just a question I had about it, about that piece of this, but I think the work here is great. So thank you.
Mayor, Councilmember Rasmussen, it's great questions because I love vetting this before it gets to the public hearing, so we can have a nice clean ordinance when it gets to the public hearing.
Director Thornborough, may I ask another question? And I just wanted to back up a bit to page 143 of the packet, where we all got very excited about the 5 required findings of G and how much nicer that is. I did have written in the margins for required finding number 3. Kind of in the middle of that sentence, it says that the proposed use is not in conflict with surrounding neighborhoods. And a nod to the comprehensive plan, which we're trying to be more conscious of and be more aware of in what we're doing here. And maybe this is a Charlie question, because I know that this was carefully reviewed for its simplicity. I would see value, because we're trying to be subjective a little bit, and that's in the beginning of this is, hey, this you gotta have your subjective hat on. But I would like to see something that softens that just a little bit to say not in substantial conflict with surrounding neighborhoods. What I'm afraid of is in a public hearing, a room full of people are going to feel that something because it's not exactly like their home or their neighborhood is not in conflict. And so so we want to be able to make a finding that says, well, there probably is some conflict, but it's not a substantial conflict. Otherwise, we're not gonna be able to approve anything. And so that might be the word that I would use, but I don't want to cement that either.
That's a good point. I could hear someone in a public hearing say, well.
You just heard me
the
testify,
way I-
there's conflict.
Yeah, the way
Yeah.
I interpret that is it's not in conflict, so it needs to look exactly like my house, I can think of one example right now that.
I bet we're thinking of the same one.
Come into play. So
Yeah.
that'd be interesting. Mayor, what do you think?
Well, that's a tie-in, what you just brought up, back to the comprehensive plan. So comprehensive plan doesn't say everything has to look the same. It doesn't say everything has to look the same. It's giving you, it's taking an area and you're not looking at the ground level necessarily. If that's a good analogy, you're saying the corporate idea we want in this area with this designation is X, Y, Z. And to me, that's a subjective analysis on whether it's in conflict on a specific portion within that greater area. If that makes any sense. Because otherwise, you're exactly right. I mean, we've talked about this before on the compatibility issues. Because compatible really needs to be looked at in the context, if you're considering the comp plan, on what the thought is for that area. Because any change can be argued isn't compatible. So you're trapped with a specific type of development, which is going to change, particularly in our areas where we're redeveloping. So I think going forward, you lean on the comp plan.
So it says, so what you're saying is the comp plan says it needs to be compatible with this area, like a zone, say, versus the neighbor. Right?
Well, I
It
think
doesn't get that specific.
I think that's where the subjectivity is. So if it meets if we're gonna start mirroring, or if we're gonna start, use the word compatible, making or how we zone or how we interpret our zones get more in line with our comp plan, then the comp plan doesn't get down to specific parcels. It says the objective in this section, in this designation in the comp plan, is to achieve certain goals. So then you get that subjective analysis on, is it achieving the goals of different types of housing or mixed use or whatever might be, and it allows you to go up a little higher and work into what's in the best interest of compatibility in that comp plan designation, which transfers on upstream to items when we have to say, is this in the best interest or is this a detriment to the city? I like I applaud all of you on coming up with these minor tweaks to a really good document, because I think it triggers that subjectivity piece that gives you the latitude, because you don't know what's going to come before you. So good job. I like that.
So for item number 3, if we could introduce some subjectivity into that, just a word, maybe a modifying word, or if we want to lean heavy on the back part of the sentence, like the mayor suggested, as articulated by the comprehensive plan, I'm fine with that as well. I guess I should have maybe read that deeper. Overall, the feedback is I love 5 findings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do caution against locking yourself into the comp too deeply. I don't, because this will have the force of law, and of course, the comp plan doesn't, but the statute says you have to consider the comp plan, and the consideration is where the subjectivity is. At least that's the way I look at it. So that gives you the reason for applying a subjective standard that you determine, because you are the people, the council gets to interpret, how the comp plan should influence your decision. So I like it. Good suggestions, my goodness. Way to read the packet, you guys.
Mayor, council members, yes, thank you. I do appreciate your attention to detail as well. Just a note that there's a property maintenance that is currently a provision of the current plan unit development provisions that has been suggested would be better placed in property maintenance instead of the plan unit development. And that's just that the landscape and development should be orderly maintained. And then a lot of residential and design worked its way into this. And the reason for that really is because currently the comp plan says that there needs to be a variety of housing that's provided as this is worked through the process. The recommendation has come to you that shouldn't necessarily be aspirational. Perhaps the city should just codify that. And so some of the changes are trying to get at having a variety of different housing stocks available through this ordinance or in the general ordinance.
Remind me, do we have thresholds for numbers above so many units? Didn't we have that?
Mayor,
For
yes.
for that variety of housing?
Yes, Mayor, it's when more than 20 homes are on a site. And then there's a requirement for a variety of floor plans, and that's no more than 25% of the site dedicated to a particular floor plan and no more than 75% of the units with the same number of bedrooms. And then there's kind of if more than 25% of the units are affordable housing as defined by HUD, then you don't have to meet that criteria. And then as already noted, the amenities will be required for all housing types instead of just multifamily. And then in looking at the code, there's been a consolidation. Right now, there's criteria regarding housing in a couple of different spots that'll be consolidated into one location just to make it easier for people to know where to go and find the criteria in code. And so you'll see a lot of green on page 148. And 149, that's just a relocation of existing criteria to consolidate those standards. One thing that people tend to struggle with is how to really address the street. Our code says address the street, but this code tries to clarify what does it mean to address the street. And so there's an example of what somebody can do to design addressing the street. And it looks like you're all looking at that, so I'll pause for a second.
That's on page 150.
Mayor, Council President page, that is. And again, the green is existing code, the black would be new. And the black is something that is a staff level review. Just to note that. On page 150, I should note that.
Pretty quiet. Can I interpret that she can go on, or we need to look at it for a moment?
I have a question. This question doesn't come from the proposed code, it comes from the legal memorandum. And I had circled this. This idea of some jurisdictions requiring a fee or the applicant to write the reason statement. What is that something we're considering?
So, Mayor, Council President, Ms. Thornborough, we've kicked it around. I don't know if it's baked into the current version or not. We've also thought that maybe that's an option, but don't mandate that, but make that as a potential option. And I don't know if that's baked in there or not.
Mayor, Council President Page, that admin code that has been on hold will hopefully address that. One thing that we've discussed is potentially at the initial process that staff could draft those and make a recommendation. We've already started doing that where we're making recommendations, but then if there is an appeal, then the applicant or the appellant would need to tell the decision maker or the city council where there was an error, either in staff or planning and zoning commission's decision. Again, that's not completely written. Charlie and I have barely discussed that, but that is one idea that's out there. And to stay on that topic, the reason for that is we've kind of gone back and forth where there's a whole range of people that are familiar with the processes, and your staff is a little concerned throwing a business owner that's just trying to open their business up in Garden City and making them find these legal findings that staff might actually spend a lot more time trying to help them through that process than giving a recommendation. But again, that is something that I would defer to your legal counsel ultimately on.
But you're addressing that in the administrative review.
Mayor, that's correct.
Yeah.
That's the intent.
Yeah. So it goes into the spot.
And then on page 151, you'll see the blue highlight. Hopefully you're very familiar with some of this. Blue, in that this was what we decided at the last meeting to relocate from the buffer ordinance into this ordinance to make it flow a little bit better, since both ordinances were trying to address the same section of code. I do have to note that as we're going through that buffer ordinance, some of the language will need to be updated in this to reflect the discussions that we've had at City Council as that's gone through. I would like to jump to 84C4 on page 154. The police department for a long time has been requesting that they have a keyless entry system when there's more than one unit taking entry from a common hallway or area. And so that is worked in both into the multifamily and non-residential structure criteria. And then the common open space is one of those sections that we see people toiling with. For example, there's a requirement that you have to have a 20 by 40 area of property to have it count as common open space. A lot of applicants ask for a waiver for that, because maybe they have something that's still functional, but it doesn't meet that criteria. And so that's why we looked at the common open space requirements. And in looking at that, there's been an incentive to either provide public common open space or group common open space with the adjacent developments. We've seen a couple of developments propose that, where you've had the developers work together where they've put their common open space adjacent to one another, and that just makes a bigger space for the tenants of both developments. And then they would also receive an incentive if they wanted to provide that to be public. So perhaps they have the front where the public can sit on a bench or something. And they do allow for that to be publicly used. There's that infamous common driveway standard, taking the 4 units out and requiring the fire department approve the development, which happens anyway. And then, to be honest, I don't remember why the provision for easements ended up in the plan unit development. I'm sure that there is a nexus. But there's the requirement that easements associated with a plat have the instrument number shown on the plat. And so that easement can be better vetted out than what we're seeing, where it's just a note saying public access. And then we don't know how to interpret that in the future. And then the definitions, the plan unit development definition is proposed to be updated. So should you choose, and then plan unit development enhanced improvements needs to be defined. Private open space is not currently defined. So there's a proposed definition for what that and common open space mean. And with that, I stand for any questions, further comments, etc.
Okay, council.
I don't have anything else.
I think it's well written.
It's great. Yeah.
Great.
Very excited about it.
Well, Mayor, members of the council,
Yeah, fun to see
thank
this.
you. I'm hearing that this is ready to be turned into an ordinance.
Much cleaner.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Farley, you're up.
Oh, yeah. The ordinance guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Sure.
Council, that concludes the items on our agenda tonight. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
The motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
I
We stand adjourned.